Coming at you here. I don't have my Sunday best on. I'm wearing a hat. It is what it is. The reality of the situation is I was inspired to share something, and so that's what we're going to do. People are messaging, they're bringing up this idea. Let's say I don't feel a purpose in my life. I'm wondering, what's going to happen at the end of all this lockdown? When is the economy going to restart? When are we going to get things back to normal? Why is the government not helping us? How do they expect us to live on just a small amount of money that they're providing us during this lockdown for millions of people who are down and out financially right now? What do they expect we're going to do? And all these different things. We need to get the economy back going. They collapsed the whole thing and so forth, right? And the reality of the situation is, they collapsed the economy. They did it back in 2008, 2009, completely orchestrated. They did it back during the Great Depression, completely orchestrated. This is not something new. Collapsing the economy and stripping wealth from you could say the working class or the middle class, or however you want to look at that, of people is a classic move that powerful elite figures that run banking institutions do. Right? It's part of how you maintain control over any mass group of people. You strip the amount of financial power that they have within a society so that they're reliant solely on the systems and infrastructures in the government that's there. That's a fact, right? That is something that we can look at and we can observe. Now, does it mean that this is a massive evil plan? That's up for you to decide how you want to look at that. The way I look at it is by having this stuff happen, right? We get to see what's actually going on in our world. And for many of us, probably the vast majority of us, this is the first time we're actually starting to question this stuff on a deeper level. Now, right now, there's still a good chunk of us who are choosing to look at it through the lens of normal life, and they're not choosing to see the truth of how this stuff functions and what goes on there, i.e. the fact that stuff like this is orchestrated and has been many times over. And we're still trying to hold on to the narrative and the paradigm of, our government really does care about us and voting does really do something and so forth, right? So there's that side of things that's going on. But we also have this incredible opportunity right now. And I saw a meme that described this, and it's really comical. I'll throw it up on the screen. You got a doctor with this massive red pill, and then you got a patient coming in. And I don't want to say, hey, the whole red pill thing is like this big judgment towards people that aren't awake, because really that's not what this is about. We don't want to get into a state where we're judging each other and picking on each other for where we're at and where we're not at and so forth. We're all opening up to things on different times, at different paces, and different aspects of our journey, and it's perfect in the totality of what's happening on this planet. So don't get caught up in the idea that some people are ruining it for everybody else, right? But you look at this meme and you say to yourself, why is the pill so big? Because for so many of us, we've chosen the route, and I say chosen, and there's a little bit of an explanation there, which we'll get to in 1 second, but we've chosen the route of ignoring so much of what people have brought forth over the past many decades about how the world really functions, what's really going on. We chose to ignore that inkling deep within ourselves, that we know that the way we're living our life on an everyday basis, within the societal infrastructures and systems that we function within, the economy, the game of politics, and so forth, right? We know that this is not fulfilling to the deeper aspect of ourselves. And this is a hard truth that we have to accept along with the other hard truths that we're having to accept right now about various aspects of corruption within our world. And we can choose to continue to ignore this stuff, or we can really listen and really start reflecting on this. But we know deep within that our lives out there aren't deeply fulfilling to the deeper aspects of ourselves. We might come up with, fun, cliche type ways of saying, I love my life, I'm so fulfilled by certain things. But for the most part, we don't want to be living in a system built on scarcity, built on disconnection, built on destruction, where we are pitting ourselves against one another in this man-made idea of having to compete for goods and resources. Right? In a system where we have all the resources necessary to do something, but someone decides to put gates around all of them, creates this idea of limitation, of scarcity, that we then all fight to have to do something with, right? And the fact that for the most part, our jobs, while some are rewarding and some do provide a great opportunity for us to actually learn and grow as people. In a lot of cases, it's pushing papers around. It's doing stuff just to obtain the pieces of paper at the end of each month to continue living life in this scarcity-driven system, right? That's what most of our jobs are. Most of our jobs isn't about what we truly care about and what we truly love doing. Now, I'm not saying that for the world to be perfect, we have to spend 100% of our time doing what our heart and soul wants us to do. No, I'm saying maybe we only do 10 hours a week of something that, hey, you know what, I'll go help out planting and managing some fields and so forth to help provide food for the community, or I'll go help build X structure that needs to be built for these people over here to enjoy it. Maybe we'll have that. But do we have to have 40 hours, for some people 60 hours, where at the end of it we have no time for anything else? And all of that 40 and 60 hours is doing stuff that is not fulfilling to the deeper aspects of ourselves. Do we want to live a life that looks like that? And when we start to see that this big, massive red pill in this meme is a response to the idea that we've ignored these inklings, we've ignored the truths out there that people have been trying for so long for people to see and understand, right? Levels of corruption, levels of manipulation, levels of deception that are purposefully pushed onto the general public, because that's the agenda of those that we're putting in power by giving our power to them, right? 9/11 was a great example of a ginormous lie that was cast forth upon people. It was an opportunity for people to wake up, and many did wake up from that event, because if you look at the facts, they in no way line up with the official story. Zero. They don't line up. We know that what they're telling people happened is not true and did not happen. We don't know 100% exactly what happened, but we know what they're saying did not happen. We also know that after 9/11, the entire war on terror became one of the most profitable, you could say, industries for those who, generate weapons and so forth, right? It made literally trillions and trillions of dollars over the course of time for people. It took away, through the Patriot Act, right, rights, liberties, freedoms from people. People love to view the United States of America as a free country. Well, at least I have my freedom. And in some ways, the question really there becomes, how do you define freedom? It's not whether it's right or wrong. It's how do you define freedom? And then when you take that definition, look at how things are actually functioning in any given country and ask yourself the question, is this real freedom? What does it mean, right? Is freedom you get to wake up in your own bed and you get to do something? Or is it to you that you believe you have the potential to do absolutely anything and everything in the country that you live in? In which case, you have to ask yourself the question, is that actually true? When you look at the way the world functions and the way the systems function, right? And so the point is 9/11 was a great opportunity to actually see, here's what's going on in our world. Here's the strings that are being pulled behind the scenes. A portion of people woke up. A large portion of people decided, no, this is all conspiracy theory stuff. I don't want to look at this. That was the choice that was made. I don't want to look at this and believe this. Now that choice was, of course, influenced by social engineering, playing upon people's emotions and people's fears of not wanting to be that person who steps outside the box, who questions things differently, who may have to go through some ridicule from the closed-minded people that are going to choose to say you're an idiot for believing that, for even looking at and exploring that. And this is part of the ways that people are kept in line, through utilizing and preying upon some of the programs and the emotions that we have within ourselves. We don't have to follow into it, but we do, right? Then the 2008-2009 crash happens. And again, the world, specifically in the United States at this point, right, has another opportunity to realize how a group of people specifically orchestrate a massive collapse of the US housing market. They knew what they were doing leading into it. They knew what was going to happen. They knew they were going to make billions, if not trillions of dollars, and they knew that it was going to come from the general people. And what happens at the end of the day? The money's all gone from the public. The people that orchestrated this entire thing are paid bonuses. And nobody goes to jail. Nobody gets in trouble. Nothing happens. So while the entire thing was orchestrated and it was designed to strip value and wealth out of the public, nothing happened. So it was again another opportunity for people to realize what's going on within our economy. Why are powerful people able to do this stuff? We get affected by it, and then we do nothing but continue to go on with our day and continue to rebuild, or so we think, all while believing, yeah, this system is designed to work for us. This system is designed to help us. Government is there to help us. They're doing their best. We elected them into power, and so on and so forth. We didn't elect them into power with a ballot. We agreed that by partaking within the systems that have been created, we agree to play the game. When we go out there and we vote, we're casting our vote for what you see out there. So today when people are complaining, oh, the government's not taking care of us enough right now, how do they expect us with a shutdown economy to pay our bills? We had all the evidence in the world that they weren't working to actually allow humanity to thrive. You continued to go out there and vote. You continued to say, hey, I agree to this system, because that's what we've been convinced to think. And so this is what continues to happen. And it's not right or wrong. It's what's happening. And so when it's what's happening, now we're in this position yet again to have to reflect and say, well, here's the choices we've been making and where they've been leading. What choices do we want to make now? Where do we want them to go? Going back to that meme again, why is the pill so big? Because all the opportunities to take the pills in the past when they were smaller, we chose not to take them. Some of us actually did and some of us didn't. Again, no right or wrong. Choices. That's all it is. It's choices. Life is, you make choices, there's outcomes. Most people continued to say, no, this isn't true. I'm just going to focus on living my life. This isn't true. I'm just going to have my job. I get to, pet my animals. I get to do whatever. I come home. I buy a little toy at the end of each month. Hey, this is great. But in accepting that way of life, that way of living, did we ever ask the question, is this really what life is about? Is this really what humans are capable of? Is this really what is fulfilling to me? Is this really what I'm here to do? Is this really what my heart and soul desires? Or did we just accept someone else's story about what life is and how it should be? Of course, within that story, there's all the things we previously discussed. We give power to individuals. Those individuals, quote unquote, abuse their power, if you want to look at it that way. And they go and they do things to manipulate the mass public. And these are truths that people are coming to accept and coming to realize over the past years leading up to this. And now within this coronavirus lockdown, people are waking up to the reality of things like mandated medicine, the dangers of 5G, the fact that we don't even know where this virus came from, what's going on, was it engineered in a lab, so forth. All these questions are coming to the surface. Corruption is rising and people are seeing, hey, this stuff actually goes on. And some people are getting scared by it. Some people are feeling hopeless. Some people are feeling, some level of trauma as they're learning a lot of these things. It's hard to accept. People are using words like, this is horrific. This is horrible. There's evil in this world. Those are the perceptions that people are having. And that's part of trying to accept this massive pill because we chose not to see it all these times over and over and over again. It's not that the evidence isn't there. And I want to make one more nuanced distinction here. There's a massive difference between poorly evidenced conspiracy theories, where it's just people put stuff together and there's just nothing to back it up, versus stuff that is very, very well documented, well backed, and well discussed. And this is the stuff that we focus on here at CE a lot. People ask us the question all the time, why aren't you guys talking about this? Why aren't you guys talking about this? Why aren't you? Because those, at this moment, there's no evidence there. These are just wild connections. The burden of proof when we believe those things is not very high. And now I don't believe we always need to have proof to believe something. You have to feel within. You have to focus. What is your gut saying? What is your intuition saying? And be careful to note, and this is where personal development, personal transformation, and self-awareness comes in big, which is why this is a huge part of how we do things here at CE. Personal transformation and information, becoming aware go hand in hand. They are together. Because We can sometimes convince ourselves that our gut is telling us that we believe something when in reality it's just our minds and our narratives that are not wanting to accept a different reality, or that are stuck on perhaps whether it's a mainstream narrative perspective of things, or whether it's a strictly conspiratorial narrative of accepting things. Where when we're stuck in one of those extremes, we're not going to really see the big picture of what's happening and what's going on. Because the reality is we want to step out of both. We want to step out of how those define our perspective, our lens as to what's going on in the world. And we want to take, what do I actually feel is going on? And I combine that with the evidence, the reality of what's taking place, and say, what is actually going on here? And how does that inform how I should shift my choices, perspectives, and you could say even opinions of how I choose to go about living in this world. And that's a loaded journey. That's a big journey. But to summarize, to really simplify what I'm witnessing going on when I have people asking questions like, I'm just not feeling fulfilled in my life. I don't feel purpose. And they're feeling these things right now during this lockdown because they've had time to stop with all the distractions of life out there, and they've had a chance to think about this stuff. And in the chance to think about this stuff, they're going, what do I really want to do? What's really going on? I'm just not quite fulfilled. So then you ask the first question, do you then want to go back to normal life? So you realize in this moment that there's a lack of fulfillment. Pushing papers around just kind of isn't doing it for me. But a lot of us are saying, hey, let's just go back to normal life. Let's restart the economy. Let's do all this stuff. So we can be distracted from this truth that's rising to the surface once again. It's our choice, right? We can look at these truths that are coming up. We can ask ourselves these questions. Do we really want to go back to normal life? Is this really what we want to do? Is this really what this is about? Or is it time to start exploring what we actually want life to look like, what actually fulfills us, what actually feels us, what actually makes our hearts pulse in joy, which is a legitimate thing, an energy that is actually felt around the heart when you explore the non-material nature of the heart, of who we are, of what this reality is really all about. Moving it from this 5 physical senses where it's just, oh, that's all it is. This is our reality, and we just got to push papers around. We just got to make money, and we just got to do these things. And we just keep going and going and going. And we keep wearing thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner, both mentally and physically. We keep wearing more thin. And then, of course, the wellness community comes out and goes, well, we just got to do meditation and yoga all day long. To which I pose the question, are we using meditation and yoga to explore who we truly are, to start changing our external world? Or are we using meditation and yoga to cope with a reality that does not fulfill who we truly are, that does not fulfill the changes that we're being asked to make right now? Because that's what most of what pop culture, mainstream wellness and meditation and mental health stuff is focused on. You feeling better, doing something no part of you wants to do. Learn to accept the world as it is through these techniques, when in reality, the world as it is and what it's reflecting within you is asking you to explore what your triggers are, what this means for you, why this is coming up within you, and whether or not we want to continue down this path. And we can keep medicating it with any form of positivity and all the different little tricks out there that are going on, but is it really going to lead towards where we want to go? When I created my conscious breathing challenge, which I've released for free during this time so people can explore, if you get to the end of it, I start to talk about how the conscious breathing is really to calm ourselves down, to calm the mind down, to get ourselves back in connection with who we truly are, to drop the anxiety, to drop the fears, to get us back into a state of coherence so that we can what? We can begin imagining and looking at, now that I'm in this state of being, what type of world do I want to create? The shift in consciousness isn't, hey, do meditation. Creating the changes in our world is not, hey, do meditation. It's shift your state of being. How does that now inform how you want to create within this world? How does that inform how you want the world to look like? So you're no longer in the fear state and all the programmed realities of how our world should function. Hey, push life back to normal, get me back to my job, get me back to making my chits so that at the end of the month I can buy some toys and do whatever. Get out of that reality for a moment, put it in a box, set it aside, say, okay, hold on, no problem. That's just there. It's okay. Shift the state of being now over to here, which really, it's not that there's two parts of ourselves that we're shifting to. All we're looking at is when you become aware of that which is always there. Your deeper self, this state of presence, this state of heart coherence can always be there. What we're moving to is from a state of being solely locked into a state of, sort of disconnected, a story built on disconnection, a story built on scarcity, a story built on having to just go out there within the five senses and just fight and just do stuff and just make money and just la-di-da-di-da-di-da, not connected to the true aspect of who we are. We're moving into where this is the driver of our experience in our everyday life, the part of us that's who we truly are. The mind still works. We still use the mind as a tool. We still use it to function. That's an aspect of who we are. It's not like we're going, to the mind is the enemy and we just got to be in a meditative state all the time. It's not like that. What it is it's shifting out of all the programming, all the things that we've chosen to accept and believe about our reality, getting into a different state of being and saying, hey, now that we're in a completely different state of being, and all that programming about how our world needs to function, all this stuff we believe, that we've been convinced to believe, someone else's story, how do we really want to live? What is really possible for humanity? What can we really do? And people ask all the time, well, how do we take action? Well, you can take action right now from the current state of being and go out there and be scared and fight and create this battle between an enemy, this massive war where the hero has to come and save the day and la-di-da-da. You can do that. That's a choice. But ask yourself the question, how many times have we played with that story? Where does that really lead? Does that lead to a state where we have peace? Or are we always just fighting? Is it perhaps that what really needs to change here is how we think, how we be, how we act within our reality, and then allow that to inform the actions that we take? Because don't forget, the only power the people in power have comes from humanity agreeing en masse to do something. Meaning, the fear of them rolling out 5G, the fear of them rolling out mandated medicine, which are legitimate thoughts. If you look at what's happening, yeah, they're probably going to roll out mandated vaccines and they're probably going to roll out 5G and they're trying to fast track this stuff. And they're trying to fast track a greater security state. You can have fear for it and continue to stay in that mindset where you believe they have so much power and that they will do whatever they want to do. But what they do is they're only capable of doing that if we give them all of our power. And what that looks like is, how do they enforce what they do? Well, how are they going to install 5G? They need people to install it. So if people wake up, if people ask the question and people say, you know what, no, I don't want to do this because I don't want my world to go in that direction. I'd rather move in a different direction, and I start changing the story. I don't need to fight the telecom companies. I simply raise awareness, get people to realize we don't want to go in that direction by seeing what's going on. And guess what? They won't have any installers. You just walk away. You don't walk away by saying, all right, yeah, well, you know what? I'm not even going to focus on, and you can watch the previous video on YouTube where I talk about this. I don't want to focus on, the fact that they're installing 5G. That's just negative. I'm just going to walk away from their game. No. Information and awareness combined with transformation of self. That's what the message is. That's what we do here. So the information and awareness about what's happening is crucial. The solution to it is transformation of self to pull the power away from these individuals even having this. We're changing the culture of how this planet functions. We're changing the culture of how society functions. From a state of being at war and in fighting all the time to a state of walking away collectively from those that we're giving power to that are taking part in actions that don't support us. And so when you have the people walking away from this stuff and no longer supporting it, and I'll give you an example, what do you think's a bigger story? You go to the November election in the United States and 55% of people show up and Trump wins by 2%, let's just say, or 2% of people show up to the November election. What do you think is the bigger story? One says, I vote for this guy and this power to continue to do what it's going to do, which I have decades of experience seeing that, hey, nothing ever actually really changes. Things actually just keep declining. Or 2% of people go out and they go, well, can we even have did we even give power to create somebody? Why are people not accepting this system anymore? Why did only 2% of people show? Hold on, what's going on? Hey people, what's wrong? Why didn't you show up? And then people start saying, well, I don't want to be part of this. I don't like how this functions. Instead, what we say is, I don't like how this functions, but I'm going to keep playing because I believe I can change the system from within the system. You can't. You can't change the system. If you understand how the system functions, we're producing a documentary on this, going to come out very soon. You understand that the system is not designed for it to be able to be changed from within. Small, minor adjustments, one little bill here, one little bill there can be affected. But for the most part, the mass scale changes cannot really happen from within the system. Now, we can still partake within some of the political process to influence and raise awareness about stuff, right? When you have a vaccine bill, for example, that's stopped in a particular place because enough people said, hey, let's really affect this particular, elected representative in this area to block a particular bill from happening. Yeah, that can happen. And those serve as examples for how it raises more awareness about how the collective feels. So again, this is like a nuanced position where you need to understand where to utilize the energy to actually make changes that are awareness-based versus where we're just giving up power to something that will never work in our favor because it's not designed to, right? Yes, the government is made up of people, but people don't run the government. The elite, the shadow government, the deep state runs the government. So we can't forget that. So what needs to happen is we need to continue to ask ourselves these questions. We need to continue to explore. When we see that what's going on in our world right now and this coronavirus lockdown is just making us feel like crap, like, oh, why? I don't have enough financial support. What am I going to do? I'm sorry, but that is what needed to happen for us to wake up. We've tried as a collective for decades to realize what is going on behind the scenes in our world. And it is tough to move through what we're moving through, to have a sense of financial instability, to not being sure, am I going to be able to afford food or these sorts of things? Yeah, it's not that easy to deal with. But the reality of the situation is, how else were we going to realize the depth of change that really needs to happen here? Enough examples have risen and we kept saying, no, I'm just going to avoid that, or I'm not going to see the truth, or I don't want to hear what the conspiracy theorists, as they say, are talking about with that. I don't want to hear that. I'd rather just watch mainstream news because I trust that that's the real story. Well, again, more and more examples, we're realizing, well, the mainstream news isn't telling people the truth, and more people are starting to realize that. And as we continue to realize it, where does that lead? That leads to us having to ask these deeper and these bigger questions. So I look at what's happening here, and like I said in the previous video on this channel, I welcome what is happening right now from the standpoint that I believe it will push us to create a better world because it will push us to ask questions that we may never have asked if the world was just humming along like quote unquote normal. So this is my attempt to say, hey, I'd love to inspire different conversation about what's going on here. I'd love for us to ask these deeper questions, for us to really change the culture of what we're all talking about, of how we can organize in a different way and say, are we really doing what we're capable of doing? And if not, how can we do things differently? And when you generate a mass, like how does politics work? You generate a mass culture around something that then participates in that. So when people say, oh, well, I don't see how asking these questions is going to change anything. Generate a mass culture around something. Organize it. Allow it to form. Allow ideas to spread. And then the ways to which we're going to go about things is going to start to form. It's going to start to become clear. The action will become clear. But if we are committed only to taking the action within a system that has shown time and time again does not and will not support us, we're accepting that this is just going to continue like this. Which is why I keep saying the choice is ours. We're moving from a state of adolescence to a state of adulthood as humanity. We have a choice to move from always looking at someone else coming to save the day that's just going to do everything for us, or we're going to become self-empowered and self-responsible, change the way we think, change the way we feel, change the way we act within this reality, and from that state of being, take the necessary actions to start shifting in transition the way we're living now to a world where we can actually abundantly thrive. Because this world is completely possible. But in order to get there, we have to be willing to let go of the one we're doing now. And we have to be willing to realize how it's not actually supporting us in the deeper aspects, the deeper desires of who we are. And that's the message I wanted to share.